What's up, guys? On the fly, back again here tonight. And tonight, this is a guy that's he's getting ready. Well, he should be just about at the Five Timers Club for as many times as he's guest hosted on here. Uh, with me tonight is Mr. Kyle from LaGrange, or another place we're not going to mention right now, Barber. Uh, Tonight on the fly, we're going to do our top five wrestling heel turns, and this is the best heel turns. One of our favorite heel turns, not the worst, because we had been talking all week about the worst ones too. But uh, let's welcome Kyle in here. What's up, Kyle?
What's going on, Stevie? Yeah, no, we thought about the best, we thought about the worst. I like the top five worst face turns. I can't wait to do that at some point. Where
Oh
my
God,
number
yeah.
one, I'm going to tell my number one now. I won't say who it is. I'll just give a hint.
Yeah, we talked
That's
about that
top five
already.
worst face
Yeah,
turns.
we
Yeah,
talked about that last night. I remember that.
yeah. We'll save that for when we actually do it.
So we've been talking about doing this for a while, and me and Kyle are big wrestling, especially Kyle's a little bit younger than me, but we we uh we watched a lot of the same things. He watched some Crockett stuff just like I did, WCW. We're not just WWE. So my list though,
Yeah, how old are you, Stevie? 52?
50 I'll be 52 in about 4 months.
Is he 51? All right. So you got me by, I'm 54, I'll be 45 in October. So 6, 7 years.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, there's enough. I remember I watched Crockett growing up, 86, 87, 88, 89 in the WCW, but don't have the in-depth memory for it because the age difference you do. And then in the 90s, I watched a lot of ECW, and you watched some ECW. So I think
Yeah.
I think your Crockett knowledge is much higher than mine. My ECW knowledge is much higher than yours, and I'd say on
Oh, definitely with
WWE, we're
ECW.
we're pretty equal.
You know a lot more ECW than I do because I watched some, but I wasn't a weekly watcher like you were. Um, I need to go back and look at some old ECW stuff. I was actually last night. I always set something on my laptop when I go to bed to be playing because I can't sleep without noise. And
Stevie, you're completely froze on my end. I can't hear anything. I'm gonna leave and come back again. Hopefully it works.
oh, so we have a little technical difficulties. Um, Hopefully we can get this ironed out. We get Kyle back in here. But yeah, we last night I was uh I'll wait till Kyle gets back in here to do that before I talk about that because that's something he might want to talk about if we can get him straight. La 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 la. It does not feel like the end of May out there, guys, and I'm happy about it. All right, here's Kyle back. Let's see if we can get him straight this time.
Trying headphones. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
All right. Headphones don't help anything.
It didn't help.
Lord have mercy. This is a mess. Audio keeps. Maybe it'll clear up here in a second. Your audio on my end sounds horrible, but I think it's my end. I don't think it's anything to do with you.
Huh.
And you're freezing.
Hold on one second. Let me try something and see if it works better for me. Okay? For you.
All right. All right.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Hey, right in a second. We'll see how long it lasts.
So let's see if it's on my end. Uh,
I'm closing
cause
out a bunch of browsers just to see if anything will help. Are we just going to restart this, or are we going to keep rolling?
we're gonna keep rolling, bro. We'll keep rolling through it. Um, but yeah, last night I watched something I hadn't watched in a while. Well, I had never watched, but you know how I like to watch those timelines, and they had I think it was 1997 WWF with Bret Hart, and then was it 1995 with Todd Gordon from ECW?
Okay. Well, it seems like they would do the same years at the same time.
Would
Like you,
think. Let me make sure I'm right on that. But hold on.
I love '97 Brett and WWF. You talking about the Hart, the new Hart Foundation with him and Neidhart and Pillman and Bulldog, and you had Austin with I don't even know. You really wouldn't call it Team USA, but uh, the Harts were faces in Canada and heels in America.
Well, I told you a lie. It is 1992, both ECW and WWF. So
Okay. Well,
I watched
'92. I mean that's Eastern Championship wrestling. That's the beginnings of
when everything started.
yeah, yeah.
So
I would really like to see. I think I told you this before when we talked about it. I would really like to see them do like '92 ECW, '92 Smoky Mountain when both of them were starting out, or '93, whatever year Smoky Mountain started.
you think Cornette would have done that by now?
And there may be something like that out there, and I just haven't seen it.
I have
But
never found a Smoky Mountain one yet. So
I'd
uh,
like to see USWA also.
yeah, yeah, I would like to see that too. But Todd Gordon, he was kind of, he's always been mentioned as the mole that
Yeah,
started funneling a lot of the ECW guys to WCW. Um, what was his role at ECW? I don't even know what his
he
role
was the
was.
founder of. He bought ECW. I think ECW's lineage goes back to like Tri-State Wrestling. And
Yeah,
then Todd was the founder of Eastern Championship Wrestling. He owned it. He had Eddie Gilbert as his booker, and then Bald Ian Heyman as his booker. And then up until there was some point, 95 ish, 96 ish, where Paul bought in and he was co owner of ECW with Todd, and then eventually bought it all from Todd Gordon. But a lot of people think, that Heyman owned ECW outright and owned it the whole time. But no, Todd Gordon was the owner, Heyman was his booker. And then hell, it might not have been until '96, '97, the time that I want to say '95, '96, Paul bought into ECW. And I think he became full owner around '97, '98.
yeah. A lot of people, I didn't realize what his. I listened to it last night for a little while, on and off, and then in and out of sleep. But
Yeah, Todd was the owner in '92 outright. Eddie Gilbert was his booker, and then he brings in Heyman. Well, Heyman and Gilbert are kind of booking together, and then Gilbert leaves, kind of gets pushed out, really, depending on who you ask. And Paul takes over as full time booker and eventually owner, and the rest is history.
and Gilbert, let's say 92. He would have gone to WC. Did he go back to WCW after that?
I don't remember him being in WCW in the early '90s. You'd be, at Puerto
Was that?
Rico,
Yeah, it was Puerto
USWA.
Rico. Yeah,
Yeah, I think he was USWA around that time, and then Puerto Rico. He was back and forth between the two, and I want to say I'm trying to remember. Yeah, he did. He was going to. He had just started working with Smoky Mountain. It was going to have a a pretty long run at Smoky Mountain. He was wrestling in Memphis. And I'm remembering this. This has become the Eddie Gilbert episode. He was wrestling in Memphis after the ECW stuff. Um, Cornette contacted him, said, "Hey, you want to come work at Smoky Mountain when you get down to Memphis?" You know, or maybe it was even both. Maybe he was going to work in both. And he came over, started shooting an angle. Uh, was it him? tagging up with Kane maybe as Unabomb, and then they were
Unibomb. Well, did he do that first and then
and then Al Snow.
Al Snow?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, Al
They
Snow.
when it didn't work out with Eddie because Eddie had a chance to go to Puerto Rico and book. Um, he brought in Al Snow to be Eddie's replacement.
Yeah, yeah. I remember I was watching some Smoky Mountain when Al Snow and Unibomb were feuding with the Rock and Roll Express.
Yeah,
Um,
I unfortunately didn't have access to Smoky Mountain TV. I used to keep up with it religiously in the magazines, and it used to get on my damn nerves. Probably the station you were watching it on. On the TV guide, you still get those in the mail at the time. You'd get your in-network stations, and then the next like affiliates over, like the Raleigh market or whatever. And there was a station that would come up in my TV guide, but I couldn't get that aired Smoky Mountain,
yeah,
and it used to
yeah.
bug the crap out of me that I couldn't watch it.
Well, it was uh, definitely a good, it's the closest thing to Crockett that I'd seen in a while. That, what was it, North Atlantic Pro Wrestling that Paul Jones did? That was a close thing to Crockett, but it just wasn't ever the same. But I would like to
Well,
see.
Cornette did with Smoky Mountain. Going back and what I've seen of it, and I've watched quite a bit of it since. It was kind of a combination of Crockett and Memphis. It was
Yeah,
kind of Memphis angles, but with Crockett wrestling.
yeah,
And I enjoyed it. I think Smoky Mountain could have been, and we'll get to the topic of the night, the top five heel turns. But I think Smoky Mountain, had it been able to get in one or two more major markets, had it had a better station in Charlotte, had it been able to get on TV in Atlanta, had it been able to get TV in Cincinnati, Louisville, which I don't know how hard he tried to get TV in Louisville because he didn't want to compete with USWA. That was still their
right.
territory, but it needed. I know he wanted Charlotte. He finally got Charlotte, but it was like a secondary channel that wasn't very good. And then he was never able to get Atlanta. Chattanooga came and went. So he had Knoxville, he had Bristol, um, a few other markets. But when your biggest media market's Knoxville, he had Greenville, South Carolina briefly, but in one he couldn't sustain. That was his problem. He couldn't get enough big markets to sustain it. He did well in the big markets he had. I mean, he did really well in Knoxville, but he did well in Bristol for what it is. But you can't sustain a wrestling promotion, selling out the gym in Hazard, Kentucky, and that was
No.
really the downfall of Smoky Mountain. He had a good little area. It was just not a very populated area. He needed a couple more major markets.
Well, I enjoyed it. The little bit I've seen of it, I enjoyed it.
And
You
just
go
like the
back now.
Raleigh station he was on, you talk about the Charlotte station, the Raleigh station, it was a weak station. He couldn't,
Yeah, it was.
and to
It was.
justify, coming and running all the way in Raleigh, he needed to have Charlotte strong, and then he could, so it just never worked.
But Cornette, definitely one of the greatest minds in professional wrestling, no doubt about it. I would love to see him be able to work with a major organization again, but I don't think that'll happen.
He don't
And to
want to.
finally get into the Hall of Fame with the
He would
Midnight
be in one of my
Express.
top five favorite face turns when with
Oh
the
yeah,
midnight, yeah, the
that
midnight angle. That was a great face
yeah.
turn.
I won't put him on the heel turn after that, which I did love that heel turn when they did their dynamic dudes
Turn
wrong.
them dynamic dudes on a damn heel turn.
That was a heel turn.
No,
Oh,
no, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. No.
well, it depended on where you were at. Yeah, I
I
know
was
what
in
you
East
mean.
North Carolina and I was a child and still on a heel turn.
I remember, was it Halloween Havoc '89 that the dynamic dudes fought the Freebirds, and when Michael Hayes DDT, I forget which one of them was. That place went nuts. You'd have thought,
Probably Johnny Ace. Everybody hated Johnny Ace. And Shane Douglas had a different partner. Well,
well,
if
Shane Douglas when he was with Steamboat, he was good. I mean,
yeah,
everybody liked him
well,
with Steamboat.
the problem was they made it too damn neon and corny. They tried that is Vince. That is a gimmick Vince would have probably gotten right. WWF would have probably gotten that right. and WCW screwed it, or was it still Crockett? No, it was WCW by that point.
It was WCW then.
Yeah, they screwed it all up,
Jim
and
Herd.
I actually heard that was a Jim Ross idea.
Well, I mean, Jim Herd wanted to call. Well, was it Ross that wanted to call him something else?
I don't know if something else would have
I,
been
I
better.
always thought it was Herd wanted to call him something like the New Generation or something like that. Maybe I'm wrong on that name. And then somehow they come up with the skate. They got with the skaters and come up with skater lingo. Lingo was dynamic, and then a lot of them said dude. So they just and being these were skater guys that didn't have any idea how to skate or surf or
Exactly,
anything like that. So
exactly. No, it didn't work, and it could have worked. Not with Johnny Ace, but
no,
but with Shane Douglas and somebody else, it could have worked.
they wanted
Although
another Rock and
Shane's
Roll
voice
Express.
didn't work, you really needed guys. You needed, you know, who would have been really good at that if he would have been younger, or excuse
That
me, older. If he would have been older, rather, if he would have been wrestling at that point. Rob Van Dam. You put
yeah,
RVD in that gimmick, he would have got it over.
I could see that. I see
You
that.
needed somebody that was like, "Whoa, what's up, dude?" You know,
Matt Riddle,
they should have had it. They should have played the dynamic dudes more like Spicoli.
Stoner guys,
Yes, you know Spicoli. What movie is that from?
Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Yes, more like Spicoli, and you know Stoner surfer guy. All I need is sun, waves, and some good bud. That's how they should have played them.
That would they wanted the next Rock and Roll Express is what they wanted.
I think they could have had it if they'd have done it that way. You didn't have to double down on the weed stuff. Just made them like, you know, what's up, dude? Ninja Turtle type acting guys. You know,
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
anyway. Top five
All
heel
right,
turns, Stevie Fly. I got another podcast to do at 8:30. By God.
I know that's what I was saying. Uh yeah, he's got more important podcasts at 8:30, guys.
I don't know about
So
important.
no, actually, you need to check them out at 8:30, guys. Sports Objective podcast. You guys are doing the regional preview for the
Yeah,
Eastern Pirates.
we interviewed earlier today. We interviewed the beat writer for the Gainesville Sun Journal. He also actually that's his primary paper, but his sports articles are carried throughout the whole state of Florida and pretty much every damn paper in the state. So we interviewed him. His name is escaping me right now. We also interviewed the associate head coach for Fairfield, who's the 4 seed down in the Conway Regional. And then, in addition to those two interviews tonight, we will have the father of Parker Bird, the East Carolina baseball player that was in the
Oh
boating
wow.
accident that had, one of his legs amputated. We'll have his father on with us tonight, and we will have and another guy whose name's escaping me, Stevie, former Coastal Carolina baseball player who was Big South Player of the Year. He was drafted by the Reds, played for the Reds, also played for the Cubs in the major leagues, and was a huge star at Coastal. He will be with us, and I wish I had his name. I'd have to go look at my notes, but he'll be with us also previewing Coastal. So we got kind of a touch of all 4 teams in the Coastal, of all 4 teams in the regional tonight. Somebody representing Florida, Coastal, East Carolina, and Fairfield. So it should be a good show. And I hopefully I'll remember everybody's name while we're live.
So yeah, guys, make sure you head over there to the Sports Objective when we get through here.
Yes,
If you're
we're active
social,
on Facebook and YouTube. Yep.
yep. All right, so here's what we're here for tonight: top five wrestling heel turns. And since you're the guest, Colin, we'll let you start off with your number five.
All right, let me bring up my list, Stevie. Let me bring up my
Bring
list.
up your
Okay.
list. You just
All
made
right.
the list.
The list. Jericho turns on Kevin. No. Number
Oh, good
five.
Lord.
The drum roll, please. Number five. Owen Hart turns on Bret Hart at the Royal Rumble against the Quebecers. They teased it. They led up to it. It looked like it was going to happen. Then Bret, supposedly gets Owen to change his mind, and they're going to win the tag titles together at Royal Rumble against the Quebecers. And during the match, I can't remember exactly what happens. I remember Bret won't tag Owen for whatever reason because he didn't want him to get hurt or something. And the Quebecers make Bret pass out for all
Because
intents
of
and
his leg.
purposes. Yeah, and the ref stops the match. I'm going off memory with the details. Where ref stops the match, which which you never really saw the ending in WWE, so they kind of, you know, showed you this was about to happen. Owen turns on Brett, and which brother against brother, and it wasn't really shocking. They teased it so long. What made it so good was just the matches that followed, and Owen,
Oh
except for a
yeah.
brief babyface turn when Vince screwed Brett at Survivor Series, Owen was pretty much heel the rest of his career. I guess maybe he was back babyface when he was doing the Blue Blazer gimmick when he passed away, but.
I
Um,
don't know. He wasn't because he was with Jarrett.
Yeah, you're right. No, you're right. It was part
Yeah.
of the tag team. You're right. So, but Owen was a great heel that really, I think Owen needed to do that. So that's why I have that on here. I really think it elevated Owen. It took him from being just a guy that was extremely talented, but thought of as an afterthought to Brett, and kind of brought him into his own as a heel, and um, never was world champion, but you know, certainly very memorable tag team champion, intercontinental champion. Their match at WrestleMania, Owen and Brett, was incredible. Their cage match at SummerSlam
SummerSlam, yeah.
is one
Good
of my
Lord.
favorite WWF matches from the '90s.
Yeah.
So Owen turning on Brett against the Quebecers, number 5. What is
That's
your
that's
number 5?
that
Or you
made
go
my
want to comment on that one further?
yeah, that made my honorable mention. Just remember one part of that was when they're wheeling Brett out and Owens up there on the screen. You remember that? Uh,
Yeah, now that you
and he
mention it,
said
yeah.
he said that's why I kicked your leg out of your leg. But I mean, one more comment about that. That it's a shame in a way to me because I don't know if you've ever seen the match where Owen and Brett fought the Steiners. Um,
Yeah, I think I did. I think that was a Coliseum home video exclusive
it
years ago.
was, it was,
Yeah,
it was a great match, and I would have loved to seen Owen and Brett team up for a little longer. See if they, without this, like you
oh
said, they
yeah, a
team.
good run, Steiner, for the Hart Foundation before the
Yeah,
heel turn. Yeah, that would have been great. In
like
fact, if you really wanted to make it good, do it against the Steiners, where you have brothers versus brothers, and then have
yeah,
Owen turn on Brett and Rick and Scott just sitting there kind of staring in awe, like what the hell? I mean, that would have been really good.
yep. Because that was a great match, and like you said, they teased it for so long from Survivor Series the year before till
Yeah.
till then. When I think Shawn Michaels and the Knights wrestled him, and Owen got. I think Owen was the only one that got pinned out of the whole family, and he pushed Brett in the ring, and that's when you knew something was getting ready to happen. So
And slow build, at least. They don't do that much anymore.
no, they sure don't. But that made my honorable mention. Um, my number 5 is the Mega Powers explode. Um, you know, you could see it coming for a while because the Mega Powers, Randy Savage, Hulk Hogan, they were in a big feud against Big Boss Man and Akeem. There was a couple of matches where you saw Savage after the match was over, didn't feel like Hogan came in time to help him, and he looked at him, he gave him kind of a look, and
You're
even
looking at
pushed him.
Elizabeth with lustful eyes,
You were
brother.
looking at lustful eyes. Yeah, and I honestly didn't want to see Savage turn heel, but because I didn't like Hogan. I liked Savage. I to this day I will say I love Savage over Hogan by far.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
but that was in my youthful days when I was like, I can't pull for him if he's a bad guy. But Savage turns on him on a main event, I just remember when he slapped him when Hogan comes over there to tag and Savage slaps him, and I was like, oh crap! Of course, Elizabeth gets hurt, and Hogan had carried her back to the back, and then Hogan goes looking for Savage, and to hear the story when they get back to the back, Hogan and Savage don't realize the cameras are back on live again till they're talking. I've never gone back and watched it, but I
I've
heard,
heard about that. Yeah.
yeah. But and then Savage beats the crap out of Hogan back there. And of course, that leads to Uh, Hogan getting the title back at WrestleMania 5 against Savage, but you know, it just Savage was just such a great performer. I mean, uh, and to see it coming like that, I remember watching him before he turned babyface. Of course, everybody remembers the match with Steamboat, um, and then the feud with Honky Tonk and how they turned him babyface. Uh, that I just didn't want to see him go heel, but it was inevitable, and he goes on a long run as a heel again with the Macho King, with Scary Sherry or not Sister Sherry, that was with Booker T,
Hulk
Queen
Hogan,
Sherry.
we coming for you. Oh,
But yeah, Savage. A lot of people, and when me and you talked about this last night when I was talking about some of the ones. A lot of people don't mention this a lot when you talk about the heel turns that over the years, but this was a big one.
oh yeah,
Um,
the Mega Powers explode. Yeah,
this was on primetime television
it
on
led to a
NBC.
WrestleMania main event.
Yeah, and to hear them talk, this had been planned for since Savage turned babyface. The whole thing had been planned the after he turned babyface, right
You
after
know,
he
it was
turned
stupid. They
babyface.
should have went away from him because he was. What I heard, they were doing better numbers with Savage as champion than they were at the end of Hogan. Being champion, and then when they put the title back on Hogan, when they had Savage as a babyface, they were doing some of their best house numbers they had done in a couple of years. Is what I
I don't
heard.
doubt that. I don't doubt it. I mean, because you you know yourself, Hogan's matches were predictable. You never knew with Savage what you were going to get. But Hogan's matches were kick, punch. All right, they're going to get the best of me. They're going to do their fishing move on me. I'm going to hook up. I'm
Shake
going to
my
throw.
hands, wave my
Yep.
finger in your face, throw you into the ring, give you the big boot, drop the leg, 1, 2, 3, post, 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 post.
Exactly. So I mean, it's predictable. But anyway, yeah, my number 5 is the Mega Powers explode.
All right, number four for me. Number four for me, and this was I almost put it higher on the list, and I'm still not sure I don't want it higher on the list, but I got it number four, so I'm going to leave it at number four. It's one of the most memorable heel turns of all time. For whatever reason, I don't know why people remember this one so much of all the heel turns, but Marty getting thrown through the barbershop window by Sean when the Rockers break up. And, Bobby Heenan going, look at that. Marty tried to jump through the window to get away.
Yeah, Bobby Heenan was the funny. That's
He
my number
was.
4. That's my number 4 as well.
All right, there we
Uh,
go. We'll talk about it together then. So, yeah, Sean, they teased it. It was teased, but not over teased. They have whatever little dispute. They're Brutus Beefcakes interviewing them. They're making up. The Rockers were together. To separate. They're not good, but together they're great, or whatever Heenan says. And then they, of course, Sean turns on Marty, and the rest is history. Sean goes on to be a huge star, and there is a term now, the Marty Jannetty, when the team
yes,
breaks
Marty
up.
goes on to be the Marty Jannetty.
Yeah, and Marty was actually good, and he had that Intercontinental title run when he came back a couple of years later.
Yeah,
I think Marty's drug and life choices is really what hindered his career more than anything.
yeah. I saw a TikTok, and somebody was at one of these conventions. Have you seen him try to walk?
Marty, no,
He can't. He can't hardly walk. I mean, he
right.
walks, but his feet or an ankle is in such bad shape. Because I know they were talking about he needed surgery on it, but he didn't have the money to do it.
Well,
But yeah, you watch him walk, and it's painful. It's painful.
oh, that's
But
I mean, he's insane. You remember there was
yes,
he tells the
yes,
story that he murdered somebody at a bowling alley when he was 15, that was
he was
trying to
molested.
rape him. Yeah,
Yeah,
and then he meets his daughter that he didn't know was his daughter, and they
yeah.
have a sexual relationship or some crap. Like, what in the world is going on with Marty?
But like you said,
What that David Allan Coe song you like?
Heenan was oh god, don't even go there. Heenan was a star of that because just like you said, Heenan when they're sitting there talking about Beefcake's trying to get them get it together, get the stuff together. He was like you said, he said, one of them without the other isn't any good. It's not going to work. They need each other. They need each other. And then, and then
Sean
when
always carried Marty.
yeah, then when he super kicks Marty, the first thing he said, he doesn't need him. He can do that on his own. And he said, and then like you said, when Michaels throws it through the window, he said, did you see him trying to dive out that window to get away from Shawn Michaels? Classic Bobby Heenan.
It's
But yeah,
fantastic.
here's a question for
You
you.
know, Rick Rude hated Heenan because he thought, and it's kind of true. Um, Rude didn't need Heenan. Um, Heenan, Rude thought Heenan tried to get himself over too much, and he did.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, he did.
yeah, but Rude really didn't need. When you really look back at a lot of the guys they put, Mr. Perfect didn't need Bobby Heenan.
Well,
At
let me ask
times,
you this though,
yeah.
Rick Rude. When do you remember Rude not having a manager?
Did he have one during his run where against Vader and all in WCW?
Harley Race. No,
Oh
not
yeah.
Harley Race. No, he had Medusa with him.
Well, that's different. That's Valet makes sense for him,
Well,
but
let's see. When he was probably in his early days in Memphis, I don't know if I think he did have
at some point Percy Pringle managed him.
Percy Pringle was in Texas.
Okay.
That was in world class. Then he
What
comes
about when
to
he was tag
Crockett.
champions with Barbarian or whoever it was, Warlord or Benny Fernandez or whoever the hell it
Manny
was in Crockett?
Fernandez.
Yeah.
That was Paul Jones.
Okay. But by the time he was in WWF, I don't really think he needed a manager. But if you, I
They
love,
were
I love Heenan though. Heenan is, and I love Rude. They were both great.
yeah. Rude was
But
the Rude was one of those guys that the few times you saw him as a babyface, I did like, and he was headed for a babyface turn in WCW to fight Vader before he got hurt. Um, they were teasing that big time, and then he was gone.
I don't think that would
But
have
yeah,
worked.
I don't think it would have either. I prefer Rude as a heel for sure. He's got the insults, like he said. I cut the music and what I like for all you fat, out of shape,
Inner city sweat hogs to keep the noise down while I
and
take
then
my
of
robe
course,
off and show the ladies what a real man should look like. You know what we're talking about has absolutely nothing to do with Rick Rude.
yeah, we were talking about the Rockers. Somehow we
Yeah,
got on Rick Rude, but yeah,
Bobby Heenan.
uh, how how do you think it would have fared out if roles were reversed and Jannetty turned heel and left Michaels babyface?
I think Shawn Michaels has been a huge babyface. I think he could have done either one. I mean, Shawn
Right.
was a good-looking guy. I think he would have got over big time as a babyface. I don't know how Marty would have done as a heel. No, I don't think Marty would have got over as a heel anywhere like Shawn did. So I think you would have had Marty as a heel. That initially it mattered, and once Shawn won, it would have been the end of Marty, and Shawn would have had a babyface run.
Right.
I think that was the way to go, and I think Marty. I don't know what the situation was. I don't know if you do. Why Marty left the Federation right after that happened. But when he comes back a couple of years later on Raw and attacked Shawn, he got over and he was IC champion. It was just his drug
Yeah.
use that got him fired.
Steve
So
Hill commented in tonight. Don't forget me, brother. Yeah. I know where you're going with that, Steve. And by the way, Steve Hill had a birthday this week. Happy birthday to you,
he did.
buddy.
Happy
Hope
birthday,
you're
Steve.
doing all right.
All right, you ready for
Um,
number? Go ahead.
number three, your number three.
Number three. Number three. Thinking of Bobby Heenan. Number three. Andre, what are you doing with him? What are you doing with that guy? Let me
Ah,
tell you something. I want to charge you for one time match at the WrestleMania. 10 years, a long time to be WWF champion.
if anybody understood that, they're great. He did a great Andre the Giant impression, though.
Yeah. Andre turning on Hogan.
That
And he rips the shirt and the cross cuts his chest and Roddy Piper
you're
notices
bleeding.
it. You're bleeding. And it's just great. So well done. I remember watching that as a kid and just being just mesmerized by those. They'd replay those those. It was on Piper's Pit. Was one of them with Ventura, or were they
It
all
was
with
on
Piper?
Piper's Pit.
Yeah, but wasn't there one segment with Ventura? Am I just remembering wrong? I know the initial heel turn was on Piper's Pit, but
All
I
right,
swear to
well,
God,
he came. All right, so there was a clip I found. I think I sent to you the other night that I hadn't seen before, and this was probably a month or two before that happened. Hogan beat somebody, and then all of a sudden you see Andre coming down the aisle, and the announce crew makes mention of him. There's Andre the Giant, and he comes in the ring. He said Hogan still doesn't see him, and Andre picks up the belt, and he just looks at it. Hogan's still posing, doesn't see Andre, but Andre's just looking at the belt. And then Hogan turns around and holds his hand out to shake it, and Andre doesn't shake his hand. He just sits there staring at him for a few minutes, and then just throws the belt to him and walks out.
I don't
And
remember that.
they really don't make mention of it too much then. But then you remember Andre got I think it was on Piper's Pit then too. Andre got a trophy for,
Yes,
and Hogan came
I
out
remember
there and
that vividly.
grandstanded.
Hogan got like Hogan's trophy was way bigger than I don't remember what the two trophies were, but Hogan's trophy was way bigger than Andre's.
And he grandstanded the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that's what I'm remembering. That's what I'm talking about. I remember all that leading up to it, and I remembered something with Ventura, but maybe I'm remembering wrong. But yeah, I remembered all those Piper Pit segments
I
leading
think
up.
I think Ventura Piper had it out over talking about it. I had a discussion on it in Piper's Pit
Yeah,
about
maybe that's what
I'll
I'm
bring
remembering.
because he said I'll bring Andre out here. I don't know if it was the
Yeah,
following
I
week
think there
or
was
what.
another Piper's Pit in between where
In between the
Jesse was
trophy
involved.
thing and the Heenan
Yes,
thing.
yeah, yes.
It
So,
was. It was. I'll go
but
ahead and
either
tell
way, it was a
you.
great heel turn.
I'll go ahead and tell you that was my number two. Um, so I mean that that's another one that people talk about heel turns. The first thing they're going to say, which the first one they always talk about is, um, with good reason. But that right there, that Andre heel turn was so important because if you don't have Hogan versus Andre at WrestleMania 3, do you think WrestleMania 3 is the big success it was?
No, of course not. I mean, what would you have booked? I mean, I don't know
Who would
what
you?
the.
I mean, you can't put Hogan versus Kamala and expect 93,000 people to be there. Or Hogan, and I mean, they just had Hogan versus King Kong Bundy. I did hear that I've always heard that Andre was he had started having trouble with his back,
Yeah, he did.
and that
Yes.
Paul Orndorff was a backup plan if Andre couldn't go. But still, and I know Orndorff. They I forgot how many they had at that big event. Was it Canada when he fought Hogan?
Yeah.
They had a ton of people there, but I still don't think the aura of just Hogan versus Andre the Giant, even though everybody was like, well, Andre the Giant's never been slammed before. Yeah, he's been slammed several times before, but nobody could go back and look it up on social media like they can now. Um, Actually, Kamala, of all people, slammed Andre before Hogan did.
Correct.
But, that was just, I just remember as a kid when WrestleMania 3 happened, you saw highlights of that on the news. I mean, on the
Yeah, it
local,
was a big
on
deal.
CBS News had highlights of it, and that would have never happened without that heel turn from Andre.
Yeah, correct. And it led to the NBC primetime special,
Yeah,
which would have never probably happened without Andre. So all of that was important. I really don't know. Orndorff, they had already done Orndorff Hogan. I don't really know what you could have done at that point. I don't know. I'm trying to think of any other baby faces they could have turned on Hogan that would have gotten that kind of reaction or even a remotely similar reaction. And I'm sure if I thought long and hard enough, somebody would come to mind. But
I'm trying to think. All the baby Piper was a baby face.
yeah, but you'd already done Piper Hogan.
Piper had just turned babyface not that
Exactly,
long ago. And
exactly.
Piper was supposedly, and I'm doing air quotes right now, retiring. Um, so you really couldn't do anything with him there.
No.
Um, Steamboat, you can't. He wouldn't have been
The
a.
only thing that would have worked, and they would have never done it, that would have gotten just as big a ratings, would have been the opposite. Piper wants to go out as world champion, and Hogan turns heel on him, and you had Hogan
Oh wow,
Piper
yeah.
with Piper as babyface. That could have done big numbers, but they would have never done that.
But yeah, that was Andre ends up getting the belt from Hogan. Who did the plastic surgery, brother? Who did? How much? How much did you pay for the plastic surgery? Yeah, everybody knows Earl and Dave Hebner, twin referees. But yeah, I don't know who fed Hogan that line to say that, but we'd
Then,
already seen
go ahead.
we'd already seen the twin referees before. So I mean, it's not like it was
Which
big
one was
secret.
Earl was in Crockett at that time, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So Cornette talks about he didn't let anybody know that that was happening, and he was watching it live and sees Earl come running out and was like, "What the hell?" So,
who did the plastic surgery? How much did you pay for it? He's
so
in tears in
stupid.
his eyes backstage. I was like,
So
ha, ha,
stupid. It
ha.
would have been so more realistic if they said his brother is employed by another promotion, or just said he had a twin brother and he paid
Yeah,
him off, or it would have been
yeah,
more impressive for them to say Ted DiBiase bought out his contract from our rival promotion.
yep.
That would have, yeah. Anyway, all right.
Everybody's got a price.
Everybody's
Yep.
gonna pay.
All right, my number three, since I've already given my number two.
Okay.
Um, my number three is probably a heel turn that a lot of people don't talk about, but I thought was I easily could have put this higher on my list.
All right.
But this is the only Crockett one I have up here,
All right.
and it's Barry Windham joining the Four
Oh,
Horsemen.
there you go. I know you love that. That's one you
And it
talk
was
about a
so
lot.
well done because me and you talked about this last night. You didn't see it coming. I
Yeah.
mean, this
I don't
was
remember it as well as you do. I didn't. What year was that? 87?
uh, was it
87, 88?
88?
Early, would have been
88.
early
It was
88.
early 88 because it was right before the 88 Crockett Cup. Um, but yeah, of
No,
course,
was it 88? Are you
yeah, it was
sure?
88. It was early 88.
What month is the Crockett Cup in?
That's usually in like March or April.
Okay, yeah, because you're right. Because I got access back to Crockett in the summer of '88. Actually,
Right.
I had access to Crockett the whole damn time and didn't know it. That it had been moved to midnight on after Soul Train on Channel 9, and
Oh,
Soul
train.
Train with Don Cornelius. But I didn't know that. I just knew it went off. It went on at 7 o'clock in the evening anymore on Channel 9 WNCT in Eastern North Carolina. And then I found out, a year later that it had been airing at midnight after
Yeah.
Soul Train went off on Saturday nights on Channel 9. So then I started staying up late. I was a little kid. Hell, 88, I was 7 year return 8. So I had to beg to be able to stay up that late to watch it from 12 to 1 on Saturday nights.
Yeah. Well, little background, of course, Lex Luger had been in the Horsemen. Wyndham was one of them that tried to talk Luger out of joining the Horsemen. Luger beat him up. Um, when Luger turned babyface, he started helping Barry Windham try to get his trust back. Got his trust back. They teamed up as the Twin Towers, and great tag team. They worked well together, and I just remember Clash of Champions 1 in Greensboro, watching that. And you go back and watch that, and you tell me when Luger and Wyndham win the belts from Arn and Tully, that isn't one of the biggest pops I've ever seen right there. I mean, Greensboro Coliseum, I was like, holy crap, they went nuts. Um, so they go through the whole, and even this is how they did it so well. Even up to like 2 or 3 weeks before, I believe, for the heel turn, Dusty Rhodes goes out there and beats up Tully and hits Jim Crockett with a bat. Well, that's when he gets suspended and the Midnight Rider comes along. Wyndham was in the middle of that. Wyndham came out there and before Dusty came out there and helped Magnum and it took on Tully. And then, like a week before, and you actually saw it after the fact, but Wyndham gets jumped by the sheep herders. Sheep herders want a shot at the tag belts. And the next week, I think it was in somewhere in Florida, this Arn and Tully against Luger and Wyndham.
That would have made perfect sense because Barry and Luger were both, they were the last big stars of Florida before Crockett bought
Took over, yeah.
Florida Championship Wrestling or Championship Wrestling from Florida. The last big stars there were, in fact, Luger had came up before they had bought Crockett.
Yeah.
I guess Barry may had too actually, and then they
Barry
buy
did too.
Crockett.
Barry
Yeah,
was big time in Florida before
yeah,
he came
yeah,
to Crockett.
yeah. But
Um,
I go ahead.
but Luger gets he's in the ring for a long time. He makes the tag, but he gets thrown outside the ring. Arn comes around and rams his head into the turnbuckle while Wyndham's in there fight with Tully, busts him open. So Wyndham's in there fighting. He ends up fighting both Arn and Tully for a while. And he finally goes to make the tag, and Luger is still outside the ring, just laying there, busted open. And here comes JJ Dillon, the manager of the Horsemen. He comes and says, I told you he wouldn't be there for you. And Wyndham just looking and looking around, and he starts fighting again. He goes to make the tag again. No Luger. And you can tell Dillon's really getting to him now. I told you so. He's not there for you. He's not there for you. And finally, Luger gets up in the ring, and Wyndham makes a tag, but he slaps his hand and his body slams him into the ring. He brings him back up and it does the lariat on him, his finishing move, and the Arn and Tully pinned Luger in the belt. And rest is history. Wyndham is a member of the Four Horsemen. I just remember that night too. Dusty Rhodes coming down to rings, or the Midnight Rider, excuse me, coming down to ringside, and he gets mad and he goes back and confronts Wyndham in the heel locker room, and they get him down because if they find out he's the Midnight Rider, he gets suspended for a year or whatever. And they pull his mask off.
And he had another mask on.
No, the baby faces had come in and they covered him, but I remember Wyndham coming to the next interview he did on TBS. He comes out there with Wyndham always wore like jeans and a shirt or just nothing fancy. He comes
Leather
out there with
vest.
a tie. He comes out there with a tie on, and he's got the Midnight Rider mask in his hand and just looking at it like, I thought that was so cool. But yeah, they did it so well because I don't think anybody saw that coming.
Yeah, I don't. That was during my down period where I did not have Crockett, so I didn't get to see that when it happened. I've seen it since then. It does look like it was very well done. I would have probably had it on my list if I'd have seen it live, but
Right.
certainly a heel turn that it doesn't get talked about amongst some of the top heel turns, but it's one people remember for sure because it got Barry in the Four Horsemen.
And
So
probably created the best version of the Horseman. In my opinion, the
yeah,
best version
yeah.
of
I
the
mean,
Horseman.
my favorite version too. I mean, some people are going to go with the original with Oli, but certainly nobody's going to question that it was. If it ain't your favorite, it's your second favorite. So yeah, it's my favorite version of the Horseman also. Um, all right, so my number two, Stevie.
You're number two.
And I would have it number one in terms of what it meant, but the other one, my last one, I love it because I thought of it. I was like, I needed one more, and I was like, oh, I remembered the one, and I ended up putting it number one just because I remember as a kid, and I won't go to that one first, but number two, and arguably the most important heel turn in wrestling history. And you know where I'm going with this is,
Yeah.
of course, brother,
Brother.
brother. When Sting and Luger in the ring against Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, and we're gonna find out who the third man is, and who's mad now? He got a bicycle.
Jeff Hogan. And,
And
and then
Hogan comes up.
Heenan's out there saying,
But whose
whose
side is
side
he
is he
on?
on? Are you crazy? They were like, who are you crazy?
Yeah. Remember Hogan comes out and he drops the leg, and
What?
you
Oh,
know
oh, oh.
and people just start losing it, start throwing stuff in the ring. He gets on the mic and cuts the whole promo about how he had made wrestling, and he said he screws up the phrase "New World Order." I can't remember what he says. He screws it up somehow the first time he says it. And
Right.
you already had Hall and Nash there as the outsiders, and the beginning of the NWO, which was the first time since WWF had really inserted this dominance that somebody challenges them. And the NWO is born with Hogan and Hall and Nash and Bischoff, and yeah, Sean Waltman at six, and then way too many members, and it gets bogged
Good
down. But
God.
yeah, but at the time, another thing, you talk about Hogan Andre on mainstream media. Same thing. When Hogan turned
Yeah.
heel, it was all over mainstream media. Hulk Hogan has turned bad guy, and it was all over the news. So ratings for Nitro were already going up, but once NWO became a thing, ratings went through the roof. Um, so undoubtedly the most important. I guess you could argue the Rock's heel turn because of what the Rock would go on and become could be more important, but Hogan's heel turn to start the NWO, brother, 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 um, got to be and I hate Hogan, but it's got to
I
be
do too.
right at the top. So I got it at number two.
Well, I got that as number one, so I'll go ahead and talk about that. But
We've
yeah,
already talked
it's
about your two and one. Your list is done.
yeah, my list is done, dude. Your
Yeah,
dishes are done, dude. Um, but yeah, but you talk about how important it was. Without that heel turn, a lot of things probably don't happen in WWF the way they do because they don't get the competition. They don't get put. If this doesn't happen with the NWO, chances are, yeah, WCW might have competed with them, but they don't take over the number one spot for 83 weeks like they did. So you don't leave WWF going, all right, what are we supposed to do here? Who are we? What do we need to do to get back on top? Who knows? You might not have the Stone Cold character. You might not have the Rock. You might not have all of that because they kind of get WWF and WWE when they don't have the competition. They kind of get lackadaisical. They get lazy, and
they
their
do.
product is not as great as it should be. That's why I'm always glad. Like when TNA came along, I was
Or
glad to
yeah,
see
when
that.
AEW first came along,
It makes them up their game a little bit,
correct.
but yeah, Hogan turning. I mean, but like you said, NWO was such a big thing. Until you should have kept it at about 5 or 6 members at the
Yeah.
most.
Yeah, I think
Um,
six members was good, and I think that six member being named six,
yeah,
it kind of worked. And I think after that, the Wolfpack thing was just idiotic, and
and then they started doing the Latino World Order. They started doing,
LWO, yeah, yeah,
and then the finger poke of doom. That was stupid. That was one of the key parts to the downfall of WCW, I believe. Um, but yeah, you just got too it got too watered down where you had like guys that were B-rate guys in the NWO. I
yeah.
mean, the NWO Sting. I mean, after the whole imposter thing was over, he should have been gone.
What do you think of Diamond Dallas's page? Once the NWO started to get overran and there was all these different factions and stuff, and this is, I think he suggested around 98, 99 when WWF was starting to catch back up and had taken back over, but WCW hadn't fallen apart. He suggested they turned the whole promotion in the NWO because there was so much of it now, and then have WCW Renegades trying to take it back over. I thought, at that point, that probably
That
wouldn't have
ain't a
been a bad
bad
idea.
that ain't a bad idea. I like that
Uh,
because it's watered down as it got. It was NWO everywhere.
Yeah, so just go
Um,
ahead and make the whole damn thing NWO. Now you got guys like DDP and all that are holding out, and they're the WCW Renegades trying to, guerrilla warfare kind of thing.
isn't that kind of what they tried to do later on with the New Blood and the uh,
Yeah, but it didn't work. I mean, that
yeah,
didn't because it was New Blood and the Millionaires Club, and it didn't. Or was it called the Millionaires Club, or was that in
yeah.
TNA? Okay,
I think it was me. Yeah, because Main Event Mafia was in
in TNA, correct. Yeah.
TNA.
So that sucked. Really, that was basically Vince Russo versus Eric Bischoff. Is what that was. That sucked. That's not what
Yeah,
it needed to be. If it would have been, we're changing it to the NWO, and then You had your WCW holdouts, DDP, Sting. That could have been cool.
Yeah, I agree.
But Hogan was your number one in the
Yep.
new world order, and
Yep.
my number two. You know what that leaves, Stevie? That leaves my number one.
All right, here we go. I got to hear this because you said
Uh,
we have not talked
we
about
have
this.
not talked about it. All right, I'm going to give you some hints here. It is from that time where Crockett and WCW is kind of merging into one.
Mhm.
89. Have you figured it out yet?
Is it Terry Funk?
God dang it. Yes, sir. It is Terry Funk. The mild mannered Terry Funk, the
I
Hollywood
didn't.
star. You
I
know,
didn't want to challenge you, Rich. I was just Rick. I was
Rick, I
just
was just
kidding.
like, yeah,
I was only
he had
kidding.
done. I'd done Over the Top, and I've done Roadhouse. I'm an actor now. I'm retired. Yeah, he never cut that promo. I'm just being Terry. Um, but yeah, he was the judge, the former NWA World Champion, Hollywood star, sitting there at the judges' table outside the ring for Flair and Steamboat, and he gets in the ring to congratulate Flair, and not that Funk had ever really been a babyface, but he was being presented as a babyface.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he gets in there to congratulate Flair, and he says he wants a shot at that world title. And Flair, is like, hey, there's a top 10, and you ain't in it, and you've been rubbing elbows with Sylvester Stallone in Hollywood, and he says, so what you're saying is I'm not good enough, and and then he says he's just kidding, and the
I
power
was only
driver,
kidding.
the power driver on the table that didn't break, by the way, they didn't gimmick that
Yeah.
table. It didn't break. You didn't see that back then. And
Nope.
I thought, did he break Ric Flair's neck? Is Flair gonna die? I was 9 years old. I don't. Maybe you thought the same thing. You were, 16, 17. So I just remember, in that point, Funk after that branding people with his brand. I was scared of Terry Funk. He
Terry
was.
Funk went. Terry Funk went from mild mannered Terry Funk as a judge to psycho Terry Funk when after he did what he did to Flair.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, he was just wild man.
and didn't last long, because he retired again. But I thought they didn't get enough miles out of it. He was just such a vicious heel that I was terrified of him. One of the few heels as a kid that I was scared of. Like
Yeah.
legitimately, I would have ran from Terry Funk at that point. But so yeah, Funk turning on Flair stuck out so much to me. That power driver on the table, and just watching Funk's demeanor afterwards.
It's just total 360 of what
Yeah,
of
yeah,
what
and
he
it was
was.
so believable.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
So
when you that run they made after that too. Of course, Funk gets
if Funk and
around
Muda and you had
Gary
Sting and
Hart,
Flair,
Dragon Master,
yeah, I
um,
mean,
Sting and Flair, the Halloween Havoc
yeah,
match, the
the
tag
stupid
match
cage.
that caught on fire, and Muda put it out with a
Yeah,
spray.
the biggest baby
Um,
face move ever.
so, because I remember it was JR and Bob Caudle calling the match. He said, I think I think it was JR that said, there's a fire up there at the top, Bob. And somebody needs to get a fire extinguisher. And I think it was Bob Caudle said it when Muda went up there and sprayed it off. Said, well, Muda just said, I brought my own.
Yeah, it was such a baby face move. I mean,
But, then that that run they had though with of course Funk. You talk about him getting crazy when he act. I guess he was out of a match. It's supposed to be another tag match on a Clash of Champions, and Funk was supposedly hurt. So Dick Slater teams up with Muda against Flair and Sting, and then at the end
yeah,
of the
the
match,
plastic
Funk comes
bag,
out there and puts the plastic bag over Flair's head like he's
which almost
suffocating.
got him kicked off
Exactly. I
the
almost got him
air.
in big trouble with TBS.
Yes,
And then they said Flying Brian's giving CPR to Ric Flair outside the ring.
it was great stuff, dude. It was
Yeah, I mean,
great.
you won't. They can't recreate that stuff anymore.
No, because people wouldn't believe it.
Yeah,
They
And
dude, they could have got so many miles out of Funk as a heel.
yeah, and then the I Quit match. Funk ends up
Yeah.
retiring because of that. But that leads to Sting. One of my honorable mentions, the Horseman turning on Sting. You knew it was coming eventually, but you did. I did not think it was going to happen on a Clash of Champions like it did. And
Oh,
there's
that
so
makes
many
perfect
things
sense.
happened
That's
from
gonna
that.
build the order in the pay per view.
Yep, and so many things happened after that. Of course, Sting getting hurt and having to sit out. Did Luger having to turn babyface because of Sting's absence? But I mean, that time, I should I hate I didn't have that on my honorable mentions here because I did
I'm
not think about
shocked. I
that.
had that in my top five, and you didn't even have it in your. That is shocking to me.
Yeah, I did not even think about it to tell you the truth. But yeah, it was a great. I mean, that was a great program right there with Flair. Flair turns babyface. I mean,
Yes.
as a kid watching it, I started watching it like late '85, early '86. I never in a million years as a kid thought Flair would be babyface, and then I see that, and all of a sudden I'm the biggest Ric Flair fan ever.
Yeah, because Funk was so mean. And
Yeah,
it was kind of like when they turned Cornette babyface.
yeah, oh
It
yeah,
was so violent and brutal, and it was done the same way. Funk at that time was an outsider. He hadn't been around in a while. Last time you saw him on wrestling was in WWF as a tag team, and then you've seen him in Roadhouse and Over the Top, and
yeah.
you really you didn't know he was kind of an outsider, kind of like the same thing when they brought in Heyman in the other Midnight, the original Midnight. So Flair was an asshole, but he was our asshole.
That's right,
And
exactly.
Funk comes in, he's a lunatic, and so he was so mean, and he had to be that mean to make Flair a babyface, and I it was so believable to me.
Yeah, I that was probably one of my favorite. Besides, like '86, summer '86 to late '87 and Crockett, that run with Flair, that babyface Flair run was probably one of my favorite runs in WCW all the way around with the programs they had going on in Crockett
I
then.
love that whole time because you had Steamboat. I love the Steamboat Gilbert stuff that led up to Steamboat Flair, and then Flair winning the title back from Steamboat, and then which went into the Terry Funk feud, which went into Flair and Sting being partners, and it was all really really good. People that shit on WCW right after it started off good in '89.
Yeah,
Was that the booking committee? Was that Flair, Eddie Gilbert, and yeah, that would have been Flair and Gilbert and Cornette, and that
yeah,
was when they were booking stuff. So I mean, that was
yeah.
good.
The only drawback to '89 that I saw were the freaking ding dongs.
Yeah,
Why
definitely.
the heck? In the middle of all this good stuff, I mean, because you had Steamboat, even after Steamboat Flair's feud was over, Steamboat against Luger.
Yeah, yes,
You
title.
had
Yeah,
the Midnights against the Freebirds,
yeah,
the Road Warriors against the Samoan SWAT team.
yeah. I remember some one SWAT team coming out with Heyman with the Halloween theme music. Remember that?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, you had and look, you had Flying Brian. He
Yeah,
was
young
he
Brian Pillman. Yeah.
he was making a name for himself against. He had so he had a couple of great matches against Luger for the U.S. belt. I mean, he really took Luger to the limit. But then you had Luger
Brad
also feuded.
Armstrong,
Yeah, Luger also feuded with one guy. I bet you'll remember this.
Stan Hansen.
No, this was
Yeah.
before. This is while Luger was a heel.
Before he feuded with Hansen. So Michael
Did
Hayes.
I hear somebody say fired up?
I don't remember him feuding with Tommy Rich. I remember him feuding with Michael Hayes.
He feuded with Hayes when he was babyface because Hayes beat him for the U.S. belt. That was
Okay.
right before he turned heel on Steamboat.
Okay, you're right. You're right. I do not remember a Tommy Rich Lex Luger feud. No, I do not.
Tommy Rich came along after the Pillman matches because Tommy Rich came. His entrance music was Hank Williams Jr. All my rowdy friends are coming over tonight.
Yeah, I remember that.
And he did. I was like, I'm sorry. I know this move was probably big in his time, but Tommy Rich's finishing move at that time was the Thesz press. And I'm like, this is not, this is boring. I mean, what the heck? He just jumped on top
Yeah,
of.
you got to update your finishing move, Tommy. It's not 1979 in Georgia anymore.
Yeah, he did that. He tried, and he had a pretty good match with Luger uh, at one of the, it's either pay per view or a clash. Luger had some good matches in that time frame too. People talk trash about Luger's working skills sometimes, but
Luger is that. I think that's been exaggerated so much. I never thought Luger was a bad worker.
all
Maybe when he
right.
first came in.
Robert Matthews comment: Shockmaster was Kyle from Lagrange.
It shocked me. You're right. It was me. I was the shockmaster.
We've been
I was
holding
there. I
that
was.
secret in for a while, and Robert
Yeah, I've
found
been.
out.
Yeah, I have the glitter stormtrooper helmet. I'll sign it for you and
He's
give it
got
to you.
he got Jessica to bedazzle a stormtrooper helmet, and he headed right out there.
That's right.
Um,
I was. The bulldog and Sting. I was going to be their partner, and
and he did. And contrary to popular belief, Kyle actually did the voice too. It wasn't Ole
that's right.
Anderson.
No, that was not Ole Anderson. No, that was my actual voice. I was like, Sting.
Oh,
No,
Sting.
I am the Black Scorpion. I mean, no, I am the
Oh
Shockmaster.
yeah, how does the Black Scorpion and the Shockmaster sound the same?
Yeah, exactly. So,
Jeez, but all right. Let me real quick. I know you got to go.
yeah.
Talk about some of the honorable mentions here. Of course, I had Owen and Brett as one of my honorable mentions that you had on your list. Tugboat from Lagrange is what. Yeah, he
Tugboat
could
from
have
the
been the
man.
ultimate Shockmaster.
Robert trying to get fat jokes. Is Robert trying to throw fat jokes at me?
Oh Lord, here
Oh
we
man,
go.
make me break out the little penis jokes for Robert. Man.
So I got here Scott Steiner turning on Rick, which that kind of was, you saw that coming from the way Scott Steiner was doing in the ring, taking over matches. How about Sergeant Slaughter?
When he turned heel,
Yeah,
I hated that. I
but
hated that
how
whole
big was that
thing.
at the
I
time?
don't. I thought it sucked. And then the Iron Sheik is suddenly,
Colonel Mustafa.
yeah, stupid. And then as soon as Hogan beats him, I want my country back.
how
And I hated it. I hated the whole damn thing.
about Paul Bearer turning on Undertaker?
Oh yes.
And
Um.
Under,
Yeah. I mean.
that was
Yes.
shocking.
Yeah. Because you need to be aligned with Jake, and yeah. I mean that deserves to be an honorable mention. Absolutely.
Mankind. That was because I think Taker was fighting Mankind, and Taker got
Oh.
down on.
Okay. No. Okay. I'm getting my stuff confused. Jake turns on Taker to turn heel. Paul doesn't turn. You're talking about
No,
when in the
actually,
'90s when Paul um when Paul
Taker
turns on.
turned babyface on Jake.
Well, yeah, you're correct. Because Jake was already a heel because he had turned
Yeah,
on Savage,
'cause
and
he saved. Didn't he save Elizabeth or something
I
from
don't
Jake?
remember. It's been so damn long. I was sitting there getting. You're talking about when Bear, allies himself with Mankind, and
Wouldn't hold up the urn.
yeah. So yeah, that belongs in there for sure.
Let's see, I think that's it. Rollins, of course, Seth Rollins turning with Shield. Uh, that was big for the people nowadays. What I mean, I was like, okay, but anyway, you always have to have a plan B.
What was Plan B?
That's what Triple H said right before Seth Rollins um, hit Roman
Oh,
Reigns.
you're right. Yeah, dude, stuff from that era. I do think that was the last up until recently with some of the decent stuff. I think if you look back in the course of wrestling history, that era with the Shield, with Punk's first real WWE run, um, the Wyatt family first coming in. I think
Yeah.
that was the last really decent era of wrestling up until maybe some of the stuff recently.
Bubba and the boys are waiting on you, Kyle, is what Robert said.
Bubba no longer participates in the sports objective. There, Robert. So Bubba is not waiting on me, but I do have several other people
Yeah. So
waiting on me for 8:30 to do the sports objective.
we are gonna wrap this up. But anyway, stay tuned, guys. We will be doing our top 5 favorite babyface turns, and we'll do the top 5 worst heel and babyface turns as well.
Top five worst. I'm ready for the top five worst face turns.
So that's coming soon, guys. But anyway, Kyle, thank you for joining us tonight, bud. Uh, we'll be doing, of course, you know, guys. Kyle's always here for the watch alongs.
Yeah, that's
Um,
gonna be my new thing. That's gonna be. I'm just gonna impersonate Kamala at random. I'm just going. Nobody's gonna know what the hell I'm talking about, but whatever.
exactly. Well, nobody knew what the hell he was talking about either.
Exactly.
Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for tonight. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you next time on the fly.